Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. I'm going to be honest with you. I love planning. If I've got a plan, then I know what I've got to do, I know the actions I've got to take, I can move forward and I can deliver results. Now, when you hear the phrase planning, most people think it's something really complex. It isn't. To me, all planning is, it's working out the steps that you need to take and then the order that you need to take them in. As simple as that. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through the steps I take when I'm planning a new project. The project we're going to use here is I'm thinking about writing an app for managing my video workflow. I like to start on my planning on paper. Here's an example. This is for the app. This is an A4 notepad. It's made by Rhodia. I use it because it's nice and fountain pen friendly, and I like to use my fountain pens when I'm doing my planning. All I do is in this initial stage, I'm not worrying about organising it. All I'm worried about is collecting my ideas, getting my thoughts out of my head and onto paper. And yes, they may be scribbled all over. Beauty of starting on paper, I can make little notes all around it. Once we've got on paper, then it's easy to start moving forward. It's easy to start thinking about it. Again, I carry on doing this on paper initially. I just jot down more thoughts and I keep doing that really until I've got everything out of my head. And that's when I can start to think about it. That's when I can start to actually do the organising and essentially the planning. Now, these thoughts, this initial work, that's not the end product. It's only the tip of the iceberg. It really is a start. What I do then is I move into my planning tool. I use a tool called OmniFocus, purely because that's what I like. There's loads of different tools out there. You can even just stay with paper. Use sticky notes. I love sticky notes. But I've got my start. I've now got my thoughts down. Before I start working on the computer though, I do one other step. I take a photo of my pages. By taking a photo, I've got it on my hard drive, so I've got something to fall back on if I should lose that paper. That's one of the downsides, isn't it, with paper? You can lose it. I then rip out the A4 page. That's why I like these spiral notebooks. And then I put it into a folder for the project. Again, I may never go and look at it again, but all my source thoughts are in my project folder. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump on over to the computer and I'm going to take you through the next stage that I use when I'm planning a project. Here we are now down on the computer. What I've done is I've opened up my project planning system, OmniFocus. I've created a brand new project and it's called the Media Management App. Really inventive name. What I try to do with my projects, at least when I'm in the planning phase, is make them something that's very easy so I can quickly jump to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going through my A4 page and collecting my rough thoughts and coming up with some rough steps about what I think I should be doing. These aren't in any particular order, they're just as I'm going through my A4 sheet. So the first one I'm going to do is hit return. That gives me an untitled action. So I'm going to call this define data model. Not going into any more detail, I just know I need to define it. Hit return again, get a new entry, create video class. Why I'm using the term class, that's because that's something that I understand. So I know that in my software development tool, which is Xcode, I need to create a class or just an entity which represents a video. I'm going to now zoom through and create a whole load of other ones. When we come back, you'll see my initial thoughts all there. Now remember, I'm keeping this simple for the fact that I'm making this tutorial, but this is what I would do first of all. So I've got my rough idea. These are very high level. It's my initial set of thoughts. The next step is to start to organise these. This is where I start digging down a little bit more, thinking about them. I try and come up with an order, so I'm doing that first level of organisation. It just means it's easier for me to see what needs to be done. Now, often, as I'm going through this, other things come into my head. If they do, I just capture them and I get them into the correct place. So let's look at the start. The start, I actually want to think about the data model first. Can I share my data with other people? Why I need to do that is I don't want to build a data model which doesn't allow sharing. So let's get that done out of the way first. So I'm just going to pick it up and I'm going to drag that to the top. So that's the first thing I need to do. Then what I need to do is think, can I define my data model based on that? Roughly, yes, I can. Won't be 100%, but it lets me get on and start to build it. Create the video class. So again, going through all these one after the other. But then I think to myself, there's something else I need to add in here. I'm creating stuff, but I'm not testing it anywhere, am I? So let's add these new ones in. So I've got initial testing of the video view. I also have to do the same for the release view. But they're not the last things I should be doing. The last thing I need to be doing is thinking about the cost, because that's where I decide how much I'm going to charge people. So now, as we can see, I've got a rough order of what I want to do the app, how I want to build it, and the order I'm going to be tackling them in. Now what I do is I spend that bit of time to look at each of these. And I ask myself, is this something I understand? If it is, all well and good. But if it isn't, I think, well, can I break this down to make it more useful? And this phase is when we get down to the nitty-gritty about what's going to be done and how we're going to do it. And this is where my list of actions, they really start to grow. One of the first things here with, can I enable sharing of data with others? I need to think a bit more about this. So I can't really break it down, but what I can do is put a note. Now I'm just going to copy and paste this because I've got this written somewhere else to save time. There we go. Why I'm putting this in a note? This is because I need to spend a bit more time thinking about it. I need to dig even deeper into it. Remember here, this is about planning what I want to do. The actual thinking, that's when we get into the do stage. At the moment, we're just in that plan phase. So I put down anything that I think of. I don't want to lose thoughts. I want to capture them. And in my app, I've got a notes field. So that's where I put it. My next step, well, now I can move on to thinking, well, what do I mean by define the data model? So the first thing I want to do in here is I want to identify the data storage tool. Where am I going to store it? Now, most of my apps I store using iCloud, but it could be I want to use Google or Amazon, all sorts of different database platforms. So this is where I start to think about that, because again, where I'm going to store it, it does impact how I'm going to build it. Now, at the moment, it looks like these are two separate steps, but they're not. This identify is part of the define step. So what I'm going to do is highlight it, grab it, and then I'm going to move it up so that this becomes a child. So it's indented. So it's now a child of this defined data model. So that's now turned and it's got a disclosure arrow there. So I can hide or show it if I want to. So I've got a load of tasks that I can think of with this. I'll go and type them in now, and then I'll come back to you to carry on with the tutorial. So I've got these all created. Yeah, there was only 3 more. And for each of these tasks, I've actually got some thoughts about them. So I've put them in the notes field. So when I actually come to doing that particular task, that action, my thoughts are there, my thinking process is there to help. So we move on and we look at the next one. And what I find here is my next one is saying create a video class. But in my new data model, you can see I've decided I'm going to have multiple users. So I'm going to create a model for the users. And everything's driven by what the user can see. So before I create this video class, I need to create my user class. So I'm going to add a new action. Create user class. I'm going to make sure that's moved above. There we go. So the next step, if I use that disclosure, define the data model, create the user class. And then I also need to create a user view for that. So let's just click, hit return again, create user view. And I keep this process going all the way through. So again, I'm going to jump ahead whilst I go through, and then we'll come back to carry on. So I've gone through and I've created all these. I haven't created the subtasks with them. Why I'm pausing now to show you this is I've made a change. Initially, we were talking about create a video class. As I've been going through this, I've been thinking to myself, well, is this actually quite correct? Am I limiting myself here by saying video? I think I am. So I'm going to add a note here and say, so it's possible to have video, podcast, blog post, article. I think there'll be lots more, but these are the first ones that are coming into my head. The idea here is what I'm doing is I'm saying, right, rather than limiting it to video, I'm going to call it media, which means I can have an optional field on there for all these different types. And they may drive different workflows. So by capturing it nice and early, I can get the right workflow going. We've gone through this. The last thing I may want to do is I'm thinking to myself, well, this looks like there's a lot there now, doesn't it? I might want to group these a little bit. So we can see here, we've got this initial testing of user view, video view, which I will now rename to be media view, and release view. They're all happening after I've done all the creating. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new, what looks like a new action. And here I'm going to call it initial testing. Then I'm going to drag these three so they're the children of this initial testing, which means I can hide it easier. So again, it's all about organizing, limiting what I can see so I can only really see what I'm working on. Now this, it's just a very, very brief look at how I'm capturing and getting the planning going. OmniFocus is a very powerful tool. I'd love to know, and please drop a comment down below, would you like to see me doing a more in-depth video on OmniFocus? It would be quite a long video compared to these, but it's something I can do if people would find it of use, and I could then do that. This is exactly how I use OmniFocus. So what I've done here, I've taken that A4 piece of paper, I've gone through a number of iterations, and I've come up with a series of steps for what I need to do, how I need to do them, and any notes about it. So now I can go away, move into the do phase, and I can make a start thinking about, can I enable sharing of data with others? And as I'm going through that do phase, I'll be adding new actions, and chances are they'll end up being child actions of this, which will let me capture what other steps I need to be doing, the order I need to do them. And every morning I'll spend a couple of minutes, I'll review the new stuff I've added in, get it into the right place, and if necessary, take the time to think about it and to add it and do any necessary planning for it. So all this, it's just a simple example of how I do my planning. As I work on the project, as we saw, new items come up. I just capture them and then I organise them. If I hit a blockage, if I can't move forward, I go back to the plan, I look at what's causing that blockage, and I break it down into some smaller steps. Every time I do this, it lets me grow my understanding of what I'm trying to do. It lets me come up with simpler steps I can take. It lets me move on from that block so I can start to get results. So in summary, for me, the use of a plan, it's essential. Doesn't really matter how big or small the project. If it's going to be a small DIY type project, I still plan. If it's going to be a massive, like with this application, I make a plan. If we're going on vacation, I know it's going to sound daft, I make a plan. I really do find that it lets me manage my workload. It lets me make sure that I'm not missing anything that needs to be done. The plan lets me see what I've got to do. It lets me break down hard actions into a series of smaller, simpler steps that I can easily achieve. It lets me take control and deliver the results I deserve. Do you currently do any planning? How do you do it? Do you use the idea of starting on paper, or maybe do you go straight to an electronic version? Please drop a comment down below. Let's kickstart the conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.